Time for some news from the international front now, and this week it's going to have something of a Germanic flavour. Let's start with the German-speaking Austrians at KTM, who have been at their mad, bad, extreme best once again with the release of a more savage version of the Beast. The Beast, as you probably know, is the endearing term they coined for the 1290 Super Duke R, a naked bike that has 180 horsepower and 140 newton meters. My favourite naked bike of the moment is the Evo derivative of this model that adds adaptive suspension to the mix. But if that's a bit too modern, cosseting and easy for you, then don't worry, because the Austrians have announced that they will be making a limited edition run of 500 of the new RR, the most extreme version possible of the already slightly rabid Beast. KTM originally brought us a RR in 2021 and charged a lot of money for the upgraded model that was also limited to 500 units. That bike sold out within a matter of hours, and given the even more rapid sales success of the two iterations of the significantly more expensive Brabus 1300R, that is essentially a reskinned, bejeweled example of the Super Duke, it seems the orange manufacturer couldn't resist the temptation to have some of that lucrative cake for itself, and so now there is a version 2 of the RR and another limited 500 bikes available for any KTM or naked sport bike fan who happens to have 27,000 euros or about 530,000 rand waiting to be spent. The headline claim is that this fancier version of the Super Duke endows it with that mythical 1-to-1 power to weight ratio. In other words, there's 1 horsepower for every 1 kilo of bike, 180 horsepower and 180 kilos. Very cool, as long as you don't look at the spec sheet too closely and realise that that means the quoted weight is for a bike without fluids and no fuel. So, yeah, not really. And the 1-to-1 ratio comes not with any increase in performance from that admittedly already amazing V-twin, but from a weight loss programme that sheds 11 kilos, I think it is, thanks to the rather liberal use of carbon fibre, a lithium battery and assorted lighting components. The bike is still fully road legal, but it will undoubtedly be a fraction quicker on your next track day because of the upgraded suspension and tyres. Undoubtedly a highly desirable, very slightly more beastly beast, but not quite as rare and limited as you might think given the previous limited production run of 500, and who knows how many future limited RR versions there might be. Me, I'll still take that Evo version and save myself about 5,000 euros or 100,000 bucks and avoid the grazed knuckles that I always seem to get when I try to adjust my suspension manually. Before we move on from KTM, I just want to touch on the subject of the impending return of the SMT. This is the Supermoto Touring that is due to be announced on the 24th of April. Strong rumours and inside leaks across the internet suggest it will be a reworked version of the 890 Adventure, so with just over 100 horsepower in the Adventure chassis, but with dedicated 17-inch road-going wheels and slightly less travel for the suspension. I put an opinion piece on our YouTube channel where I said basically that I found this proposal to be quite hard to believe, given that the existing 890 Duke naked bikes make 115 horsepower in standard trim and just over 120 horsepower in the R version. Debuting a bike that already has history from 14 years ago when it was actually a 990 V-twin, a history as being a hugely entertaining 116 horsepower sport tourer, I just find it difficult to believe that the return of this storied model would be in such an emasculated form. Don't get me wrong, I'm sure if KTM has decided to bless us with a 103 horsepower SMT, they will have done it in such a way that it will still be very entertaining. However, I said in my YouTube rant that I hoped it had at least the 115 horsepower of the standard Duke. It is a sporty touring model, so it needs to be able to carry, and quickly, rider and passenger and possibly also luggage. Bringing any less performance than this to the current middleweight sport touring road-going adventure class that is dominated by the 117 horsepower Yamaha Tracer doesn't seem viable to me. And I say this because I am an unashamed fan of their ready-to-race attitude and their bikes on the whole, especially the naked ones. I may own a MT-09, but my middleweight naked bike of choice would be the 890 Duke R. And in the Litre Plus segment, I'd take that 1290 Super Duke R Evo every time. My ultimate street bike for sure. Anyway, after some more pondering, I suddenly thought, and I admit that this probably makes me even more wrong than usual, and I am already very often wrong, but what if, and I'm pretty sure KTM's own social media hype about the SMT has been suitably vague up until this point, what if the return of the SMT marks not just the return of a well-loved model, but also a well-loved capacity? The occasional rumour has been circulating for a year or two now about KTM developing a 990 motor, almost certainly the parallel twin that we've already seen as a 790 and 890, that it would then use in the next generation of Duke and Adventure models. What if that engine is ready? And what if the SMT is KTM's opportunity to announce its arrival? That would mean a minimum of, say, 125 horsepower, possibly even 130, and that would give the SMT a chance of heading directly to the top of the middleweight touring segment. That would be a very KTM thing to do, don't you think? Then within a year or so, you'd undoubtedly have a 990 Duke, a 990 Adventure, and what ultimately would be a more natural capacity and performance gap between the reintroduced 790s and the flagship 1290s. I really hope this is the case because I, like many fans of the SMT style of road bike, really want it to be something that shakes up a class that has long been ruled by the likes of the Tracer 9, Kawasaki's Versys 1000 and more recently BMW's F900 XR. Now that I've said it out loud, I do feel a bit silly, but when I woke up during the middle of last night, it made perfect sense. There's undoubtedly some valid reasons underlying why I only write and talk about bikes rather than being involved in making them in any way, so probably best to ignore my deluded, dementia-ridden opinion on the subject. Oh well, moving on to our last piece of Germanic news, and if, as I presume you all are, you're a serious petrol head with a passion for internal combustion engines, you will already be in a state of denial, perhaps even in a state of early mourning for motorcycling as we know it, because of the EU-imposed ban on selling new cars with our favourite petrol engines from 2035. That may sound like it's only Europe, but once imposed there, it will basically affect what you can buy anywhere. The rules will supposedly apply to motorcycles at the same time, but there's already pushback from Ducati and in the performance car world from the likes of Ferrari. Well, now we have a new ally on our side in the shape of the German government that is saying, presumably under no pressure whatsoever from its hugely profitable and influential car industry, that it wants an exception to the new rules based on the use of synthetic fuels that can be used in a carbon neutral way or something. The German government has the backing of Italy, the Czech Republic, Poland, Romania, Slovakia and Hungary, not forgetting the small, poor but wholly independent dictatorship of the bike show that selfishly wants to keep riding new petrol powered bikes until hopefully, I don't know, at least 2050. When we are offered electric bikes with a genuine 250 kilometre range that take less than 5 minutes to recharge and weigh no more than the equivalent combustion engine model, I will rejoice and find space for it in my garage next to whatever synthetically fueled bike I'll be riding then. I'm sure you will do the same, but before that happens though, we'll be back again next week with a new episode. See you then.